Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
I can put my glasses on, too.
Oh, I'll put mine on, too.
Yeah, everyone, wear your glasses. It's cool.
Glasses day. These actually might be helpful anyway. It's the blue light glasses for looking at the screen all day. Fantastic. Guys, it's a doozy of a day. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, and a lot of trigger warnings. I can't wait for Jamie to just get into all of that because there's so many. But we are talking about the 2023 science fiction horror movie, Infinity Pool.
Woo, let's go for a swim, baby.
Swimming in blood, lots of blood, guys. So this movie was written and directed by Brandon Cronenberg, and this movie stars Alexander Skarsgård, Mia Goth, and Cleopatra Coleman, to name a few. So obviously heavy spoilers for Infinity Pool, and Jamie, let's just get started on those trigger warnings. Check.
Oh, man. Okay, so there definitely are insides on the outside. There are images of sex and sexuality. There's also, I would say, some not so consenting, assaulty that's happening. There's a lot of drug use, hallucinations, breastfeeding.
Question mark?
Mm-hmm.
Question mark.
Nipples. Some people are afraid of nipples.
Okay, yes.
General disturbing imagery, creepy masks, like very creepy masks.
Lots of stabby stabs.
Yeah, just lots of insides on outsides. Stabbies, slicing, neck shooting in legs.
I just want to jump in here. Thelephobia, Thelephobia, thelephobia is the fear of nipples.
Thank you, producer Brian, for
the more
coming
you
in.
know.
I want to be clear, I'm not afraid of nipples, but like there are a lot of nipples, and in those dream sequences, there are some wild nipple sequences. Just want to make sure we're super clear.
I mean, yeah, there's a whole term for it, so absolutely, we gotta make sure that we cover that.
You're welcome, listeners.
Yeah, was worried.
Jeez. Well, I mean, let's get into the things. Producer Brian, tell us some more stuff besides the term for being fearful of nipples.
Yeah, no problem. I'll make sure to stick to the fact that we are on YouTube. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
We're on YouTube. You can see us all putting our glasses on if you switch over to YouTube. We did take them off, except for Jamie, just filling you in. You can, of course, see us and follow us on all social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Talk Horror Pod. Wanted to slow down there so you can get that. Follow us. We have over 11K on TikTok now. And we have playlists. So if you're like, wow, I really like this one specific thing that we're doing. Like we're going horror movies by year. I watch movie trailers that we don't necessarily talk about on this podcast. We're reviewing movies that we don't talk about on this podcast. We're doing fun lists like the worst partners in horror movies and stuff like that. So definitely check us out on TikTok. Back to you, Nikisha.
Beautiful. Well, speaking of things that we don't necessarily talk about on the podcast, is there anything new that you guys have watched?
We did. Jamie, do you want to tell Nikisha what 2000s classic that we watched?
I do. I was trying to think of a funny way to do it, and my mind totally went blank. We rewatched Scary Movie. Like the scary movie.
The scary
movie. The very
on
first
HBO.
one.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay. I will have to revisit. How was it watching it now in the year of Beyonce 2023?
It was definitely weird. There was like so much obviously that I remembered because like we also rewatched Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer recently. And so like all of those scenes are super fresh and it really is a like verbatim where they just redid those scenes.
Yes.
But all the stuff in between is very weird. Some of it I really didn't like, and a lot of it doesn't hold up.
I'm sure. That's what I wanted to hear, because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot does not hold up.
I'd say,
The
like,
whole thing with Doofy is like, oh, this is like, I'm like cringing uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like I would almost argue that 75% of the movie doesn't hold up, but the 25% that does is the stuff that makes fun of horror movies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And
that
is because it's like exactly what is already in the horror movies that we've already seen.
yeah, it's also a crazy time capsule because you have like the Budweiser "Was Up" commercials in there.
Yeah. Oh my
you-
gosh.
Honestly, like I don't even know if people talk about Usual Suspects the same way now that they did in like late 90s, early 2000s, like the ending of the movie and stuff like that. So like super time capsule, but like Jamie said, the stuff that relates directly to making fun of the 90s horror movies definitely still lands.
Nice. Is the first one the one with the basketball scene, or is that the second one?
I think
guess
that's
it's
the
the second
second one.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one
Yeah.
just has the this one just has all of the locker room stuff with what's his name, like they all question what's his name's sexuality, which like,
Yes.
does not hold up at all.
Yeah.
Sean
I
Bean's
blocked
characters.
all of that out of my memory. I was like, oh my god, like I didn't remember that as part of the plot at all.
Yeah. Because it was one of the weigh-ins, right? That they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
Marlon plays
Yeah.
the dumb little brother, right? And then
The stoner.
the stoner,
Sean,
and then
yeah.
Sean plays the character who like is always making like sexual innuendos about like his sexuality and like what could be and what isn't, and it's just like I don't know, definitely rubs me the wrong
Yeah.
way.
Oh man. I mean, yeah, it's like some things you just want to leave for when you just watched it and you don't need to revisit it because it can really just kind of change your perspective on the movie. But I mean, hey, why watch that when you can just have the real stuff? Watch Scream
very true.
and her run away crazily while talking to her.
Oh man, but that was really funny
Yeah.
when Anna
Yes.
Faris runs away, and it's like, oh yes, this is exactly what happened.
Right.
She did it the same
the
exact
same way.
We belly
Same,
laughed
yeah.
a lot. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
lots
yeah.
of belly laughs and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
when it's actually focusing. Oh, also forgot that like they reference the Matrix in this, where it's like that's not even a horror movie.
yeah.
What is going on?
They said, what is relevant in pop culture right now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Let's just throw it in on top of the horror movie.
Yeah.
Well,
oh, I liked the Blair Witch Project reference.
O'Terry.
with-
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
Sherry
yeah.
O'Terry playing Gale Hailstorm, and just like snot endlessly running out of her nose into the camera.
yes. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, speaking of just belly and snot and things, y'all, I watched Possessor. And it's definitely not a movie to watch before you go to bed, but that's what
No.
Oh
happened.
man, no.
And, you know, just trying to get on the Brandon Cronenberg train, which now it makes sense. I watched Infinity Pool first, and then I watched Possessor.
Interesting.
So, because I didn't know if I would have time to watch Possessor. But it all makes sense. Just in how he shoots, it's very much kind of the same, or it is very much the same aesthetic and the same level of gore. I kept thinking about, what was the term? Morror.
Oh yeah, more
Morror.
horror.
More horror, more gore, more, and it that Possessor gave me way more than I ever thought that I wanted of gore and blood and stabby stabs in the stomach. No belly laughs, a lot of stabby bellies in Possessor.
Possessor
really
is a movie that truly messed me up. Minor spoiler alerts for our listeners right now. I know we're talking about Infinity Pool, but I do want to talk about Possessor for a moment. And this movie has it too, Infinity Pool. That feeling of not being able to escape something when you really want to, and when it's so personalized in Possessor, like at that opening sequence at the beginning of the movie, when he tries to kill himself but he can't, and he's like stuck in this body, is truly something that I can never let go, because all of a sudden you're living a life that you weren't supposed to be living, and it is, and there's no comfort. Literally, the skin is crawling around you. I will never watch any of these two movies ever again. Like, I got it. I'm good. I will watch Brandon Cronenberg's next movie because I really like him as a director. But like, I'm good. Oh my God, Possessor. Oh, Possessor really messed me up for a long time.
But I love the concept, and it just reminds me. I mean, felt like a whole Black Mirror movie. Yeah, just because of the technology and the science fiction of it all, I thought it was really interesting. But man, I was just stuck on how much gore was happening in it. But it is. And then the family at the end, it's just so sad. It's so sad, but we won't get into that because I don't know about that.
The blood doesn't fall far from the tree. The gore doesn't fall far from the tree, maybe.
The blood doesn't fall far from the Cronenberg.
Yes.
Because so much. Grand. Well, let's get into everything that is Infinity Pool. And I feel like I'm probably going to get both of them mixed up because I've watched them back to back, but we're going to make it happen. I think it is, unfortunately, Jamie's turn for a 2-minute plot summary.
What happened in this movie?
What's the plot?
What actually happened?
All right. You have 2 minutes to tell us the plot, the very high-level plot of Infinity Pool. I opened the calculator, so I'm going to go
really
and... All right.
Always
now,
the calculator.
We are on the timer. 2 minutes, and tell us about Infinity Pool, Jamie. Go.
Okay, so novelist James and his rich wife Em are on vacation in this made-up fancy country. They meet Mia Goth's character and her husband Albin and decide to hang out with them. They leave the resort and they get drunk and accidentally hit and kill a local person. They end up getting arrested and find out that like he has to die. That's his punishment for killing somebody. But you can pay to have a clone made for an expensive fee and have your clone killed in your place. So he pays for the clone. He watches the clone get killed before him. His wife is there and she's like, I can't deal with this. And she's like, I gotta go. But he apparently hides his passport and then he's like titillated by this experience and starts hanging out with Mia Goth and her husband, meets more people, finds out that they're like these weird murder tourists that are really into this whole experience and like intentionally commit crimes so that they could watch their doubles get killed. And shenanigans ensue. It's like a weird drug-fueled hallucination murder orgy that takes place for like, I don't know, 45 minutes of this movie. Yes. Then you find out that Mia Goth and her whole crew of murder tourists have just been using James for their own entertainment on their vacation. He tries to escape. And then they end up finding him on this farm, and they order him to kill a clone of himself in order to complete his transformation. And he does. And then she breastfeeds him. And then they all are like, we're going back home. Vacation's over. And he's like, I have to stay here because I am messed up now.
That was perfect.
Yes, that was.
It just ended. That's 2 minutes. Infinity
Yay!
Pool.
That was very high level.
That's the plot.
No, that was great. I mean, that was everything that happened in the movie. Because yes, there was 45 minutes of just tripping and
Murder
nipples and murder
orgy.
and yeah, it was a lot of things. All right, Brian, I'm going to ask you to start our section of likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
Tell us what you thought of this movie, and why do you like Brandon Cronenberg? You said you like his directing stuff.
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
I think it's very interesting. I think he's an interesting director. I think he tells a narrative in an interesting way. I think he's handling themes that he has full control over. I think that the thematic elements, so we'll go with my likes. I think the thematic elements of this movie are really fascinating, and the way he presents them are fascinating. In terms of, are we always violent? And once we get a taste of it, we can't turn back. How easily can we lose touch with humanity, especially when there's no concept of consequences? How rich people live on a different level than non-rich people. How people who weren't raised rich or married into wealth handle wealth, and still there's a difference between people with money and people who got money. I thought all of that was fascinating, and I think similar to Possessor, it has to do with a lot of losing or gaining connection to past selves. I think that actually Possessor and Infinity Pool as a combo platter, Possessor really talks about like a character realizing they no longer have a connection to their past self, and then Infinity Pool kind of ends talking about like you add another layer to it in terms of with the money and like being rich and more double stuff. So I just think it's really fascinating. I thought the masks in this were spectacular. I'm a big mask guy. I thought the masks were beautiful. I thought the symbolism of the rain coming, that like the idea of like that archetype of that rain cleanses was really interesting. This like oncoming storm. So you have that tension. Plus at the very end, not even a monsoon can wash away what he did. Like it's almost like working against that archetype, which I really liked. I like that the individuals who were like on the island had the monsoon marks next to their eyes. I'm wondering if there's a deeper thematic element to that, but to me it was just kind of like, this is an islander, or not an islander, or a person of this country, because I'm not sure if it was an island or not or whatnot, because I think it's supposed to be an Eastern European country that has like water access. I don't know, it's fake, so who knows. I really like the two perspectives of being, quote, in the arena. The first time they're in the arena, it's from the perspective of the real James. And the second time it's from the perspective of the clones being dragged in there thinking they're real. I thought that was excellent. I thought the gore was really good in this movie. They're working through privilege. I thought the score and the tension that this movie brings and builds is awesome. I think that the dream sequences, the hallucination sequences, similar to Possessor, are really well done, and they're clear. Yeah. You don't ever there's not like a random like donkey in one, and you're like, why is he seeing a donkey? Like it all relates back to like what he's experiencing. His wife is there. Mia Goth is in there. You have all of these different images that relate. I thought it was this movie has a lot of fluid. You have you have a
literally?
lot, like literally,
right.
I mean, aside from blood, you have a lot of urine in this movie. There's semen in this movie.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is we learn towards the end that his book is about a urologist, which I find fascinating.
I think I caught that. Yeah.
Like all of his mental break sequences going back are, I truly feel like his mind's splintering when they keep creating a clone. It's almost like they're pulling something away from him. Like you can feel that in those sequences. Oh, especially those images of like his head being cracked open in those were just like very effective. because you have it when he's making the copy, when he's on drugs in the house. I love that.
Well, let me ask. Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Because in you just saying him losing a piece of himself, do you feel like that was particularly characteristic of him as a person? Because you have the other rich people who obviously have done this a million times, and it doesn't seem like it affects them, but maybe it has affected them in the way that they really don't care about the human life anymore, and that's why they're kind of going on this killing spree. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I also think you could tie that into the fact that, like, they've always experienced this privilege, so they're always kind of two-faced in a way, whereas, like, he didn't come from this money. He never had privilege growing up. He only gained privilege when he married into the family with privilege. So maybe that's a part of it, and he's never had to kind of deal with something like this before, even on a smaller version. I also think there's a world in which, like, they had similar experiences, but they feel freed by it, and he doesn't. I actually thought this movie was going to end very differently. I predicted while watching this movie that it was going to end with them all getting into trouble again, but he couldn't pay for the clone, so he has to die because his wife cut him off.
Yeah.
I thought, and then the rich people are just like, oh, like, we just had our fun or whatever it is. Like, there's another one. But, like, I like that's not how it ended, because I think that almost was a little bit too predictable, and this one was more interesting character-wise.
Yeah, for sure.
The nipples, not to, like, dwell on the nipples, but the idea of, like, being reborn in the blood of his past self, like this idea of, like, sucking from the teat of, like, violence, is a really striking image.
Yeah.
And I loved the sequence at the end, the boring talk on the bus. And he's just like, what the hell is happening? They're talking about, like, paying the contractor and, like, where the keys are on the house. And like, all of that is fascinating. He'd rather be with the worst parts of himself alone on the island or in the country than go back to the mundane life. Whether he just doesn't want to go back to that mundane life, or whether he just can't compartmentalize the two things.
Yeah.
Or maybe he just can't face in the real world the things that he's done. Regardless of what he's feeling or thinking at the end of that movie, it's wildly effective. I like the idea that the infinity pool title is a little bit weird, in that, like, this all started because the guy was building an infinity pool.
Right.
And the idea that, like, you know, now as rich people, like, they can just keep going back and forever and ever do whatever they want to do. And I like the idea that pool looks like the infinity sign, the two O's in pool. So those are my likes. I will never watch this again. I got what I needed to get from this. I thought it was super effective. The performances were spectacular. We all stan Mia Goth, obviously.
Always. Always.
You know, our good guy Eric from True Blood is always good. I just thought everyone in this was really good. And then I have gripes with this movie, but I know I'm just going to say them, and I'll let Jamie kind of explain them a little bit more, because our gripes are very similar.
Nice.
Two things. One, I didn't think it set up enough his desperation for him to be involved fully in all of this. I think, you know, they're talking about his inspiration is gone as a writer. He got a bad review on a book he wrote 6 years ago. They present his wife as a nagging person who's a breadwinner, and that's kind of all they do to set that up in some ways.
Right.
And then, like, the twist is that he hid his own passport. I don't think at that point in the movie, I could not buy into the fact that, like, this person would be, like, so manipulated and swayed by that group of people. I'll stop there because I want Jamie to talk a little. She had more interesting points on that, in terms of, like, her feelings on that. I really liked this movie a lot. I would definitely suggest it. But I'm, like, good after one viewing.
Right. I'm so glad you're talking about this, Jamie, because I actually had a question of, is it even believable that he would completely upend his life and leave his wife for these people? And like Brian said, the passport thing too, to know that he hid it, it's just so wild that after that one encounter, he said, I'm going to stay here and see what happens next. So,
yeah, I mean, like now thinking on it more, am I like, is it believable that he would like throw away his entire life for these people? No, I don't buy into that. I don't think that there's enough setup for us to be like, oh, he's so lost that like these folks are availing themselves to him and like taking him under their wing. Maybe not in like the best of ways, but like, they're with him in this journey and like they're driving a lot of it. But like, no, that doesn't make sense. We don't get too much of that. And like his disillusionment with his life or like with his partner or with writing, I just feel like that isn't super strong. But I think that Mia Goth's character, who's an actress, like, is maybe able to tap into like his ego enough to convince him. But ultimately, I think it's less about throwing his life away for these other people and more just about like all of these questions about the other and cloning and like those things that are probably keeping him there more than just this group. That's upon sleeping on it, that's what I'm deciding makes a little bit more sense, that like the group is a part of it, but it can't be the whole thing, because that just doesn't, I don't buy into that like on a human behavior perspective. Like, there isn't something so compelling if I meet somebody new and like want to hang out with them and then like experience something horrible. Like, yes, there's trauma bonding, but like this is his like commitment to like keep going based on this group. I don't buy into that. But I think that he's so like shocked and like intrigued at this process, and he's like still actively like making sense of it. I feel like that maybe we can see why he would want to stay for a few more days, but like he also didn't have enough time to really fully understand everything that's going on. And it's like, I just have a lot more questions about like the motivation to stick it out and like do all of this stuff and just wholeheartedly believe everything that everyone is telling him at any given time. Like he's just operating so naively that like he's just like literally everything that Mia Goth says, he's just like agree. Why is he like doing drugs? Why does he believe her that like these drugs are okay to do? Why does why does he believe anything that she is saying? She's already given you enough information at the beginning, knowing that she's an actress and like watching her little like acting scene to maybe have some pause.
Top 10 moment in this movie: the bread, the cutting the bread, easily.
Just can't cut bread. It's impossible. But like, there's just no connection for him. Like, he's just like, he's smitten because, I have a fan. And like that, but like, I don't know. And maybe my ego is like, maybe I'm too self-critical and I just like couldn't buy into someone coming up to being like, oh my God, Jamie, I'm your number one fan. You do such a great job, fixing brains.
Yes.
So like, I just don't know. I don't know what that's like. And I'm curious. I'm actually curious, Nikisha, as somebody who, like does have fans and like, I'm curious about like, what would it take for you to buy into what somebody else is saying if they're like, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so mind-boggling to me.
It is. And I agree with you. This is a grown man, and it's not like an influential teenager who is being swayed by their elders or someone that they admire, because then that in itself could be more believable. But you are a grown man and you had a book published and you're just completely upending your life because you have this one fan. There has to be something deeper than that. And to answer your question, just in my own experience of just being in the performance artistry world, I mean, I talk to my therapist about this all the time. My ego sways the opposite way of I'm absolutely highly self-critical, and I never believe what anyone says about me because I think that what I do is 9 times out of 10 trash to myself. So it's truly amazing that someone would just take this one person's fandom and say, oh, yeah, then if they think I can do it, then I can do anything. And I want to keep going with this feeling. Now, of course, as artists, we want to be validated. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I can understand wanting to maybe talk to her more because you feel like you're going to continue to get more of that validation. Mm-hmm. But I think there's definitely a line that is crossed that crosses into being unbelievable, right? Like Jamie said, I can understand, you know, you kind of hanging out with them and wanting to find out more information about the things, but just to say that your one pinpoint is I'm staying here because I have this one fan here, and even though it's been years, you have a wife, and you would think that she would be your fan
for 10
too.
years. They've been married for 10 years.
Yeah. And why can't that person be your validation and your anchor and your grounding in order for you to say, okay, well, even though other people might not like this, I still enjoy writing and I want to find a way to make it fun for me again without the need of other people. Because as an artist, your first instinct to do the thing is because you enjoy it, not because you're going to get validation from it, right? And so I think it's really hard when people follow the validation of it because why did you start it in the first place? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what is your draw to continue on doing the thing, not someone else.
Well,
yes.
Here's a question for both of you while we're talking about this. A gripe that I also had that I totally forgot about is at one point when they're laying in bed together, and that's when he kind of leaves. This is after they watch the double, his first time watching the double get killed. His wife says something to the effect of like, "What's wrong with you? Why didn't you emote? Like, who are you?" Like, I mean, we don't get to know the wife that well in the movie, but that just felt like a disingenuous moment. That felt like the script trying to justify, like, or show the fact that, like, he's changed. But, like, I don't necessarily, for my money, for my, cloning money, I would basically say, like, I think that was totally unfair of her. You don't know what's going through his head in that moment. We, as an audience member, know that something is broken at this point because, one, he was jerked off by Gabby in the woods. Like, he feels a tremendous amount of guilt from that. He just hit somebody in a random country. 3, he just had this, like, operation essentially done on him where we don't know the outcome of it. And all of that just felt like a lot for her to say, like, what's wrong with you? And I didn't believe that moment. Did you have similar feelings while watching that moment in the movie? Because I feel like it's pivotal to why he decides to do certain things.
Yeah. I think I do because, like, I mean, again, it's still, there's a part of me that's like, going back to the, is there enough character development in the beginning or like the setup for us to know whether or not his reaction is out of character? Because, like, in the beginning, their very first engagement in the very, very beginning when they're going to breakfast and then she's like, I'm going to go to the beach. Like, there's already clearly a blocker between them. Like, they're not as close as they once were. And, like, the spark doesn't seem to be there. But that still doesn't give us enough to know if, like, his non-reaction, in her opinion, is warranted or not. Like, I would still be processing, all of the things.
Yeah.
I don't know
All
when
the
I would
things.
not be like he's like he looks like detached and maybe like dissociating a little bit. Like, I think that's a totally normal response to this series of traumas that he experienced in, like, we don't even know how, like, 24 hours. Like, it's such a short period of time. Yeah. So I think that, like, that detached, dissociating, that numbness that sometimes people get, like, it doesn't mean that they're not having a reaction. That is the reaction. And, like, again, that's a very normal reaction to trauma. So her her kind of being like dismissive of his experience and just assuming that he's like super into it, which like maybe she does know him really well, but we don't know either of them. So it's like, you need to give us more to help us understand why this is so out of character for him.
Also, something I should add to that too is he's probably processing the fact that was he or wasn't he sexually assaulted by her? Like, does that like he lets it continue, but like she starts it without his consent. So like regardless of whether we think it's sexual assault or not, like he's processing what that was. You know what I mean? Because like he may have been letting it happen in the end, but it didn't start that way. And how does that work with how he's feeling about his wife at the same time? Like it's something else that's obviously running through his head. Nikisha, did you believe that moment more or less than us?
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys in the fact that there was just not enough information for us to decide as an audience if, we see that he is acting different. Because like Jamie said at the beginning, they already are not on the same terms, and it seems like they are kind of breaking away from each other already. But yeah, I would just still be thinking about, and not even the Mia Goth thing, but when I was watching the movie, I was thinking, oh my gosh, he just killed somebody. And that's what would be in my mind over everything. You just ended somebody's life. I would love to think about the simpler times of maybe this person did something to me or not. You know what I mean? In comparison to you ending somebody's life. So, and I think the only thing in the movie that also kind of gives us things are turning is as during the execution they pan to him and he kind of smiles a little bit. And when that happened, speaking on when Brian was talking about what the ending might be, I thought that the ending was going to be that the punishment is that the clone is the one that lives with the wife and has to deal, you know, and the actual person really does die. Because what was also not believable for me was that the family would be okay just killing a clone of the person and not the actual person,
which is part of his dream, or that of the young boy who killed his clone, kind of strangling him in the end. Still like that kind of guilt. But also that's an interesting point, because I actually thought at one point that was going to be some of the twist as well. But then when he finally meets those people who had very similar experiences, and I think the movie does do a good job of showing how his experience is different than their experience, even though they're all in the same group, because of maybe, you know, he's not used to living a life without consequences. Like, he wrote a book and the consequence was he can't write another one. Like, I think that was interesting. But also the doctor at that point says, like, you ever think that you're the clone and the other one's not? But I think the movie makes it very clear that it doesn't matter in some ways. Because they're exactly the same. So even if the clone ended up living, the clone would still think it's real and never be revealed to
and
not
have
be
all
in
the
some way. Same memories, same like disassociation breaking that we know of. I'm kind of filling in some plot holes there, but it's totally.
Yeah, but all in all, I definitely think that we just need a little bit more context for us to really know that, like Jamie said, that he is desperate and that he really is trying to look for something else that is fulfilling, because it's not coming from his work, it's not coming from his wife, so he needs something else. But can we also just in general talk about Mia Goth on the car scene, because that was the top moment for me, as far as her just drinking her little wine or whatever and riding on top of the car and saying, I'm a good actress, aren't I? And it's like, yes, you are. This is amazing. You are fantastic.
Oh,
it was just so good.
So freaking great. And I'm just like so excited for her career. She's so interesting. And yeah, like even if there are things that I'm not totally sold on in this movie, like Mia Goth just makes me believe that, like, sure, there probably are murder tourists. I mean, like, Hostel existed already way before this movie came out. Like, you know, where are these ideas coming from? And so like I'm buying into, like, she is making me buy into the fact that, like, sure, I'm sure the extreme rich are going places and doing horrible things and like don't give a crap and like are just like living their pretty little rich lives. And she is just so excellent at her craft. I just love her. Yeah,
she's so good. Everything that you guys said on the likes and gripes were all my likes and gripes, so I really don't have anything else to add to it except for just we will always stand Mia Goth because she's just an excellent. She's just excellent at her craft, and it's great. But Jamie, do you have any more, Jamie? Sorry.
I mean, most of it was just like Mia Goth.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, I enjoyed, like, the questions that it made me ask of, like, which version are we following? Like, the real person or the clone person? And, like, what does it actually mean to watch yourself be killed? Like, what does that do for the psyche? What does that do for, like, I mean, to watch anyone get killed, but also it's, like, knowing that this is a version of you that, like, also has all of your memories and, like, the same relationships and, like it is essentially like you getting killed, even though you are outside of it. So it's like, how does that, like, I enjoyed those questions, but then immediately after I wrote a note that was like, he's just really stupid.
Yes, he is. I agree.
So yeah, while I didn't totally buy into him, there was a lot of other elements that, like, I did buy into. Just, like, the idea of this country and, like, what they were establishing was really fascinating. Like, I was definitely intrigued by a lot and just kind of more disappointed at, like, following Alexander Skarsgård, even though I love him. But also was just like, I feel like you could be a little bit smarter.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it.
Is it a one and done for you, Jamie?
Probably. I mean, I could probably watch this movie one more time just to, like, maybe pay closer attention now that I kind of know what the whole thing is, just to see, like, maybe there are, like, glances and more, like, nonverbal cues that indicate kind of where he's at versus, like, more exposition to explain things. So I would give this another go. But like I said, I think I'm, like, still very much, like, processing, all of it.
Yes.
The orgies, drugs, and all of it. My aversion to nipples.
Thelephobia. Thelephobia, my friends.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will also say, Jamie and I laughed at the same time when the twist of the movie was revealed, when the detective is like, well, the other thing we do is we can make an exact replica of you. And he says it so casually, we both laughed because we're like, oh, okay, this is what this movie is about. But we were cracking up. But the movie does an excellent job of reeling you back in to make it realistic. I think that is a like.
Right.
That movie could go off the rails and become like this non-believable sci-fi romp, but I think it definitely keeps it in.
It keeps it grounded for sure. It doesn't seem like it's something too out of the box, which is good, even though the things that we are griping about are not the fact that there's clones. It's just the fact that the guy is making the dumb decision. Right. James is just an idiot. So the testament to the movie and its groundedness. But
I felt really smart because I did guess that he was under when he was beating up the one what he thought was a cop, and they, like, did the big reveal and took the hood off. I was like, I knew it. I knew he was under there. I knew it was all a trick.
Just all a trick. They just wanted to have some summer fun.
Yeah, it's just summer fun. They just wanted
summer fun.
Oh, man. I want summer fun, but I really don't want it to look anything like that.
Nothing like that.
Do you want a little summer fun?
Yeah.
Come to this random country.
No, thank you.
Get cloned.
Oh my God. How funny was that ATM?
Oh,
I loved it. It was just like this huge, empty, prison-like structure with, like, a little ATM in the corner.
It's like, give us money.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Here you go. Goodness gracious.
So here's a question. Oh, another thing that I loved about this movie is at the end when Mia Goth says, like, we thought we were going to have to get you in trouble, but you're so stupid that you got yourself in trouble.
Good.
It's easy for us.
That was funny. I did like that.
So funny.
It's almost like the lights turned off. That was his destiny. You know what I mean? In some ways.
Yeah.
I was expecting for us to find out that they set him up, that the lights were going to go out, and then, like, the cop wanted more money, so the uncle let him borrow the car. Like, I thought that was going to all... And for all we know, it was going to be that. But then she said that line, and it made me laugh because of what my expectations were.
Well, and then just further proves the point of he is just an idiotic person in general. So he got himself in trouble, and he kept getting himself in trouble.
Yeah, and
over and over again.
It also was disappointing in some ways because, like, he drove because he wasn't as, quote, drunk as the other guy. But, like, for all we know, the other guy was saying that he was too drunk because, like, they were trying to set him up for something to happen.
Right,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild. Well, we've already kind of dipped into brains, but, you know, let's continue on because lots of brains, lots of blood in this. The first thing I want to ask, though, Jamie, if you had to Billy or Stu Mia Goth's character, which would she be?
Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative. It's a scream, baby.
Billy or Stu?
I think I'm gonna say Billy. I think that there was definitely some, even though she didn't know how she was gonna get them in trouble, like she said. I think like the goal, once she targeted him, I think the goal was always like, this guy is going to be our guy that we like set up and like do all of this stuff with. So like she was gonna do whatever she needed to do to like keep the bit going as long as she could.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I mean, I think there's like enough forethought behind that to make her fall under the Billy bucket.
Yeah.
I mean,
Billy bucket.
at the very least, she Wikipedia'd him once.
Yeah.
She knows the deal. Gosh, could you imagine Mia Goth in one of the Scream movies? Just how fantastic that would be.
Unhinged.
Very much unhinged, but I will be here for it. I need for
yeah.
her to show up in something. I'm sure they have more Screams to come, and somebody put Mia Goth in there. Put her in all the things.
Hello, is this thing on? Somebody put Mia Goth in there.
Please. Grant, so I did have a question about it being believable about James, but we already talked about that, which I love because we need more character context, guys, for that one in particular. But I do want to talk just a little bit about M's character, the wife, and her marrying James, and them just talking about daddy issues because her father didn't want her to marry a writer, and so she went out and married a writer. And I just want you to speak on, Jamie, why do you think that we as a people tend to go towards find partners that are against our parents' wishes?
We
in a
the
sense.
people
We the people
have decided to
Yes.
date people our parents hate.
Yes.
Yeah,
It happens a lot, and it's crazy. It's either they're like, you find someone like your parents, or you find like who your parents hate.
I mean, I think that there's something to like an independence and like breaking away from your parents and like, you know, making those choices on your own without without that influence. And so it's like if somebody is directing you, and like there are certain cases where like, you know, some parents are narcissists and they you know, do have too much influence over certain aspects of your life. So it's like, I'm not an extension of you, I'm my own person, like allow me to make a decision for myself. So I don't know if that's necessarly like a daddy and mommy issue thing. But that's just like the first thing that it makes me think of. It's just like you know, the decision to like be like, I'm an autonomous, independent person. I'm going to make my own choices, whether you like them or not. Especially because there's like so many reasons why parents might not like our partners that like, you know, I don't need to explain every single one of them right now when some of them are, you know, not great. So it's like, again, people making their own decisions. Hopefully they're making decisions that feel right for them and not just doing it because their parent is telling them that they shouldn't do it.
Right. It's just finding a sense of independence, and then wherever that falls is where it falls. Yes. Did your parents like Brian when they first met him?
Yeah, they did.
Didn't
Brian perked
didn't
up real
expect
quick.
that question. I did not expect that question to come through.
They do really like Brian.
I took them to a very nice French restaurant that no longer exists in Midtown Manhattan. Tout va bien. And they had a delightful time, and it was very nice.
Yes.
Wow.
They didn't just like you because of the good food choice.
No, but I mean, you know, you got to check all the boxes. You know, what I give, I will be the first to admit that as my crazy ex-girlfriend says, I give good parent.
Oh, I love that. I give good parent. Such a great show. Such a great episode. Oh, fantastical. Yeah, like I said, all the questions that I had in brains, like Jamie, you mentioned a lot of them already. So Brian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the end of this movie momentarily in terms of like the ability for the quote rich people, the Mia Goth and her crew, to compartmentalize everything that happened to them, the violence versus real life when they're talking about the mundane things on the bus. And he just does not have the ability to kind of separate the two. He's just been fully indoctrinated into this violent life and he can't even go back. Can you talk a little bit about just like compartmentalization in general, to his extreme, but then just like us on the day-to-day life?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a big question because I think like, man, I love compartmentalizing. What a favorite coping mechanism.
Okay, yes.
But I'll be the first to admit, yeah, but like also anything... Too much of anything is usually not a good thing.
Fair.
Too much compartmentalizing is not great because you're not really able to like fully sit with all of the stuff. Like you're not really letting yourself sit with all of the stuff. And so, you know, it's just under the surface. It's like, at the end of this movie, are these rich people truly able to just like go back to their regular schmegular degular lives? You know, maybe they think that they can, but like it's certainly still taking a toll on them, whether they're aware of it or even care about it. But like, you know, this impacts it impacts your relationships. It impacts your ability to like do your job. Like when you're overly compartmentalizing, especially like really traumatic and heinous things. Like clearly they're also really desensitized to all of the murdering and orgies and stuff. But like, that's also not good when we become like desensitized to these things. And some might say that like they're already like in our reality that people are becoming desensitized to like really horrible things because like of social media or like too much news consumption. And like that can be really harmful. That's something I talk about all the time is like in therapy is like, you know, helping people navigate their social media and news consumption because it just like makes us feel way more distressed. We're like so much more anxious and overwhelmed. And again, it's like, you know, do we then compartmentalize all of that? And it's like, can there be some kind of happy medium? Maybe, I mean, maybe also don't go to a touristy place and murder a bunch of people to watch your clone get killed. So don't do that. But, you know, when you are facing like really traumatic, awful things or like general stressors, like figure out space to like start processing some of that, whether it's just like meditating or like practicing grounding exercises to like check in with how you're doing and feeling, journaling, just like different things that you can do to like tap into some of what you're carrying versus just shoving it away, because again, it's not really gone. And then like looking at Alexander Skarsgård's character, like his on the opposite end, his complete inability to compartmentalize, because like it's just so heavy. Like how again, like I feel like this is a particularly challenging thing to compartmentalize, is like all of what you experienced and witnessed and were a part of, like the choices that he made in this week's time to just like be completely unhinged and like, making you wonder, are these like latent human characteristics that are under the surface that like when given the opportunity we'll just take advantage of? I don't know, but maybe for some people, and like just trying to navigate who he is, like I think him at the end with Mia Goth saying like you're completing your transformation, it's also just like you've done all of these things, like you can't go back to who you were before, because now you're carrying the weight of all of this stuff. And I don't think that compartmentalizing is going to help you just live your life, because you can't go back anyway. You've transformed. You are like this reborn into something new. Yeah. So like, he's going to have an even harder time compartmentalizing, because like now he believes that he is no longer who he once was. How do you go? You can't go back. There is no back. He's a new person. Right. So I think he just needs like a fuck ton of therapy.
Sure. There you go.
On the island.
Also, I just wanted to shout out this Collider article that I read, Infinity Pool Ending Explained, by Chase Hutchinson. I thought it was really interesting, especially I like reading thought pieces after or think pieces after I've done the work on my own. But I thought that was a good one, just as in general. I want to say that before I forget it.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, I think that's all we have for that. Do we want to do Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah, let's do Rotten Tomatoes.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Okay.
I'm so interested.
What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? Jamie, why don't you go first?
I'm going to say 69.
Whoa, heyo.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
I was going to say 65.
Well, you are both very wrong. This has an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh,
wow.
Okay.
Right.
That is very interesting.
So the critics' consensus is 87%, and it's turbulent waters even for strong swimmers. Infinity Pool provides a visceral, all-inclusive retreat of Cronenbergian perversion for those wanting to escape commercial sundries. Sure.
That was very high level.
I know.
Yeah.
However, the audience score is only 51%, which you got closer to. And that says Infinity Pool is definitely a wild time, but when it's trying to be scary or provocative, it's often just confusing. Yeah, I don't necessarily. I didn't find this movie confusing in its narrative. I thought it was confusing in maybe some of its justifications.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah. All right. Let's do the 4 S's.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
We've got skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. We're going to start with Jamie. Give us your 1 through 10 of skulls, scares, and shakes of what you think this movie is. Skulls being human health and mental behavior. Nope, human behavior and mental health. And
human health.
Scares, how scary it is, and shakes, how much it's going to stay with you.
So for skulls, I gave this a 4 because again, for me, it was just really hard. I was not very well convinced that somebody would just throw away their whole life to like pursue this thrill, and just like believe a bunch of strangers to start murdering people. That being said, for scares, I gave it a 5 because this movie is like pretty unsettling, intense, and icky. And again, maybe not like jump scares, but I was like very uncomfortable throughout the whole watch. Because I knew that like something weird and wacky was going to happen. Then when we finally get into it, it's like, all right, like let's dive in. But still, I'm just like, ugh. Like that's just like my ick. And then for shakes, I'm giving this a 6. Probably because I'm still processing it myself. But no, I definitely want to like have conversations about Mia Goth and like the trajectory of her career with everyone. And this is going to be a part of that thesis.
Yeah,
so,
your doctor thinks it's really weird when you bring it up.
Yeah,
that's all you want to know. Mine was very similar. Skulls was also a 4 for me for the same reasons. Scares, I just gave it a bump up to 6 because it was just so much blood and so many stabs that really made me uncomfortable. And shakes, I did 1 down from you, Jamie. I did a 5. So, yeah, it'll stick with me, but it's definitely also a 1 and done for me.
Sure. I did 5s. I did a 5. Actually, I did 5s for both skulls and scares. I thought that it gets 5 because I thought that if you can just believe that he would get into this, like everything there is interesting, but I just have trouble getting to that point. Scares is a 5 because it's not scary. I actually think the scariest thing about this movie is the tension that the score builds. And also those opening camera shots of everything just being twisty-turvy. Like, that's kind of similar to Midsommar. That, like, brings us into this backwards world, which I thought was interesting. And then if I give... This is how I thought about this. Possessor is a 10 for me because I will never be able to forget it. But this is not Possessor. So I put this at a 7.5 because I'm still going to think about it and remember it. Especially as a package deal with Possessor, which is my suggestion, Possessor.
Yeah.
You just going into your suggestions?
Yeah, I also had another one. If you wanted to watch, like, Consequences for the Rich, The Menu is also not a bad one.
You just literally stole my suggestions right out from under me.
You could clone. We'll create a clone who can do the suggestion.
Wow. Well, talking about Consequence of the Rich, that just led me to another suggestion. I haven't seen this movie, but from the trailer, it seems like it would be the same premise. Triangle of Sadness. Did y'all watch that?
No, we didn't see it.
No, okay. That's an on the list movie.
Well, I would put that because I also had Possessor. I mean, that's the easy suggestion to give.
Yeah, I took the easy way out. Wait, Jamie, did you have another one or no? Did I just ruin everything?
No, you really just took both.
Yeah.
Right out from under
watch
me.
Pearl and X.
I mean, I guess like
another
examination of the rich playing games, ready or not.
Oh sure. I mean, actually, that's a really good one, especially because the end you kind of you roll through all the consequences.
You know, when you said rich playing games, the first movie that I thought about was Clue.
Also, yeah.
Right.
But I thought, well, that's not a horror movie, so why would she suggest that? But Ready or Not is fantastic. Grand. Well, I think that wraps up our episode of Infinity Pool. You can follow us on all the social medias, the Instagram, the TikTok, the Twitter, but keep following us on TikTok, guys. We're trying to just get our following up at Talk Horror Pod, P-O-D. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
Yeah, listen to us wherever you get podcasts. That's inclusive of Spotify. That's inclusive of Stitcher. And, of course, Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
Thank you.
The reviews really do help. We're trying to grow, and as you probably heard in a million other podcasts, reviewing us, helps put us out there, puts us into the algorithm a little bit better, and we'd love to reach more ears. So thanks so much for doing that. We really appreciate it.
Beauty. Brian, do you have any quotes for this?
Just the one. I'm paraphrasing it, but just the one where there are two. There are two great quotes from this movie.
James.
That's
what? That's great.
That was
amazing.
That was a great impression.
Oh, I'm not even.
That.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
My two were gonna be Mia Goth quotes, like the "I can't cut the bread" and like.
Oh yeah.
You figured out a way to do it anyway, but like. That was incredible. We're done here.
One more time, Jamie. What was it? You can do it.
Ooh, James! Just screaming. Oh man, so good.
So good. Thanks, guys.
Thank